Welcome to this explainer. You know that mind of yours, the one you trust implicitly to guide your every single move? Well, what if I told you it might just be the biggest deceiver in your life? We walk around our whole lives assuming our perception of reality is totally objective, 100% flawless. But as we're going to see today, your brain is actually putting on quite the magic show behind the scenes.
Just imagine a confident eyewitness in a courtroom. They've got their hand on a sacred text, and they are absolutely, unequivocally certain of what they saw a suspect do. We see this in movies and real life all the time, right? And in that exact moment, that witness genuinely believes, with zero doubt, that they are speaking the absolute truth. But here's where it gets wild. Science tells us that right then and there, that person's brain might be feeding them a massive, fabricated lie.
See, we tend to think of our memory as a flawless video recorder. We assume that once an event happens, it gets recorded, and we can just hit play in our minds later and watch it exactly as it went down. But your brain, it isn't a secure hard drive where files get locked away. It's actually a lot more like a Wikipedia page. It can be silently edited at literally any time. And the craziest part is there is no Edit History tab to show you what just got changed.
So, let's look at Section 1, Memory and Perception, the Wikipedia page. Neuroscientists have actually found that when we recall a past event, the brain doesn't just quietly open a file. Instead, it completely recreates that memory from scratch by firing those neural pathways all over again. This is a process called reconsolidation. And here's the genuinely terrifying part. During reconsolidation, your memory is at its absolute most vulnerable. Every single time you recall an event, your current mood, some new piece of knowledge, or even just the room you're sitting in can permanently add completely fake details to the original memory. You aren't actually remembering the original incident. You're really just remembering the last version you recalled.
Now, evolutionarily speaking, your brain's main job isn't to be a perfect objective historian. Its job is your survival. So what exactly happens when a past memory completely clashes with a current belief? Well, it creates this super stressful mental conflict that we call cognitive dissonance. And to save you from all that psychological discomfort, your brain steps in as a survival tool. It quietly tweaks your past memories so they fit perfectly with what you believe today, essentially saving you from a total mental breakdown.
And it doesn't just stop with the past either. Your brain absolutely hates incomplete stories. It hates missing pieces. So to deal with the unknown, it relies on confirmation bias to filter your present reality. It literally fills in the blanks with what you expect or want to see, and it completely ignores any contradictory evidence just to save some mental energy. If someone tells you a guy is arrogant before you even meet him, your brain is going to filter his totally normal behavior just to find that arrogance. You aren't seeing reality. You are seeing an interpretation of it.
Moving right along to Section 2. Ancient software in a modern world.
We might live in safe, comfortable apartments now instead of the jungle, but guess what? Our brain is still playing by jungle rules. Take loneliness, for example. We usually just think of loneliness as a sad emotional phase, right? But brain scans actually show that social rejection triggers the exact same areas in your brain as physical pain. To our ancestors 10,000 years ago, being separated from the tribe quite literally meant death. And that is exactly why modern loneliness throws your nervous system into a panicked hyper-alert state. It ruins your sleep because your ancient brain is quite literally scanning the dark for predators.
And if there is one thing the brain despises even more than isolation, it's uncertainty. Your brain fears uncertainty way more than bad news. Why? Because back in that ancient jungle, not knowing if those rustling bushes hid the wind or a hungry tiger meant potential death. If you get bad news today, your brain can at least immediately create an action plan. But uncertainty, it leaves the brain totally helpless, causing your stress hormone cortisol to just continuously spike. This is exactly why waiting for test results, or even just waiting for a text message reply, can sometimes feel way more agonizing than an actual rejection. The brain just desperately craves closure.
To survive all the stress of our modern world and conserve its energy, your brain takes some pretty drastic shortcuts. First up is the peak-end rule. Your brain isn't going to accurately remember an entire day. It's going to judge it solely by its most intense emotional peak and how it ended. Then you've got the paradox of choice. We always think more options mean more freedom, but having too many choices actually traps the brain. You know when you scroll through Netflix for 30 minutes without picking anything? Or when you stare at an 8-page restaurant menu? Your brain's glucose levels are actually dropping. This is decision fatigue. Your brain gets so completely exhausted that you just end up ordering your usual comfort food to escape the overwhelm.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Anatomy of Superstition.
We all know these familiar everyday rules from our families, right? Don't cut your nails at night, don't sweep after dark, don't go plucking leaves at night. It is so easy for us to just dismiss these as totally baseless myths. But a few hundred years ago, before we had electricity or flashlights or modern nail clippers, these were actually highly logical safety protocols. Think about it. If you try to cut your nails in pitch black with a sharp blade, you're going to injure yourself. If you sweep in low light, you might accidentally sweep away your dropped coins. Reaching into dark bushes, you might get bitten by a snake or a scorpion. Over time, the practical logic faded, and our brains replaced it with supernatural fears just to keep enforcing those old safety rules.
But why on earth do we still believe these myths today when we have electricity and totally safe tools? Well, it's because our brains are basically pattern-seeking machines. Thanks to that confirmation bias we talked about, we remember the one single time a bad event followed a broken rule, and we completely ignore the millions of times absolutely nothing happened. Ultimately, these rituals provide us with an illusion of control. When life feels scary or unpredictable, performing these little superstitions gives our ancient brains a comforting sense that we are somehow managing the unmanageable.
All right, let's shift gears to Section 4, the night shift, dreams and simulations.
During this dream state, you could literally be having tea with a dinosaur or taking a math exam with no clothes on, and your sleeping brain just accepts it as totally normal because its logical filter has gone completely offline. But then, suddenly, you feel like you're falling, and you jolt awake in a total panic. You've probably felt this. It's called a hypnic jerk. As you fall asleep, your muscles naturally relax, but occasionally, your brain completely misinterprets this natural relaxation as a literal physical fall, and it jolts you awake to save you from hitting the ground.
And what about when those dreams turn dark? Well, psychologists actually believe that even our nightmares serve a really profound evolutionary purpose. They basically act as the brain's practice sessions. By simulating dangerous or stressful scenarios while we're safely tucked in bed, the brain is putting us through a training mode. It ensures that if we ever face actual real-world threats or severe emotional stress like exams or bad breakups, our minds are already somewhat prepared to handle the anxiety.
Now for Section 5. Who is the driver? The illusion of free will.
Back in the 1980s, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet conducted a landmark and, frankly, terrifying experiment. He connected people to an EEG machine to monitor their brain's electrical signals and just asked them to move their finger whenever they felt the conscious urge to do so. The results were absolutely mind-blowing. The brain's electrical activity to initiate the movement actually began 300 to 500 milliseconds, so about half a second, before the person was even consciously aware of their desire to move.
What this means is that the decision to move was already made in the background before your conscious mind even knew a thing about it. For automatic decisions, we really aren't the CEO of our lives consciously calling all the shots. Instead, our conscious mind acts a lot more like a PR manager. We pause on a random social media video, or we grab a specific snack, and our brain literally invents a logical reason for it after the fact, simply to justify a choice our biology had already made completely behind the scenes.
Finally, Section 6, the Hacker's Manifesto, taking back control.
The absolute best example of this is the placebo effect. When a patient gets a sugar pill but is told it's a powerful painkiller, the brain believes the lie so completely that it actually releases real endorphins and dopamine to heal the body. A mere thought turns into literal physical chemistry. And thanks to a concept called neuroplasticity, we can actively rewire our brains. Look, if our brain is already going to bend reality and be biased, we can consciously feed it positive thoughts and actually train it to be biased in our own favor. We can intentionally reprogram our own deceptive software.
Your brain is undoubtedly your greatest friend, but it's also your greatest illusionist. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought for today's explainer. The next time you are absolutely 100% certain you are being totally logical, take a second to ask yourself, are you really? Or is your brain just writing an easy script to save energy and keep you comfortable? Keep asking questions. Keep a very close eye on the stories your mind creates for you, and sweet dreams.